Very good morning to all of you. Today, you all are welcome on Sriram's IAS, and today we'll be discussing the Hindu newspaper, and we'll also be taking up some questions on the basis of that particular newspaper. Okay, so before starting anything else, I must tell and I must discuss the relevance of newspaper to all of you. As you all know, usually Saurabh sir takes this class, but for the coming week, he will not be available due to some personal reasons, so I'll be taking it. My name is Aman Sharan, and today what we'll be doing about it is that we'll be going through each article which is relevant from UPSC point of view. ये आप लोगों का नॉर्मल न्यूज़पेपर रीडिंग सेशन नहीं है जिसके अंदर कि आप चाय का कप लेकर बैठ जाएं और न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ें. What is required out of newspaper is that you should be involving it in your UPSC preparation. Okay, so before starting this whole session, I would like to come up with the offer provided by Sriram's IAS, which is free 1:1 mentorship. Okay, you all can come and visit the center as well as contact us telephonically so that we'll be able to solve your issues related to UPSC preparation, and you can proceed with your preparation in an effective manner, okay, as well as an economical manner. So now, without wasting time, let's look into the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper. Now see, the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper we have taken up as the reference. We know there are other editions also like international and other such editions, but we'll be focusing on the Delhi edition because of course Delhi is the capital of our country and most of the news are driven from here. But of course it's a biased opinion, but it is true till a particular nature. Okay, now a lot of issues are relevant as far as today's newspaper goes. So we'll look into those particular relevant articles. The page number has been mentioned here, you can note it down also. Okay, I'll just name them so that, and then we'll be taking up each and every article one by one. हम बात करेंगे हर एक आर्टिकल के बारे में, लेकिन साथ ही साथ पहले आप यहाँ पे एक टेबल देख लीजिए जिसमें कि फर्स्ट न्यूज विच इज रेलेवेंट फ्रॉम यूपीएससी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू इज PHC doctors, that is primary health care doctors, a case where caregivers need care. Okay, so this article is not from the perspective of that the people who are seeking primary health care, but the primary health givers, कहने का मतलब जो डॉक्टर्स इसमें इन्वॉल्व हैं उनके इशू को डिस्कस किया गया है इस पर्टिकुलर न्यूज आर्टिकल में. इसके अलावा द ग्रोइंग रेलेवेंस ऑफ ट्रेडिशनल मेडिसिन. नाउ इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट because the Ayurveda day is coming up, so that's why this article becomes very important. Anyway, in the field of Ayush, the present government has done a lot, and that's what we are going to discuss in this particular article while we are discussing it. Now next is base structure. Anyway, it is in news and it must be in news because of a Supreme Court verdict in which in the Dasara festival, due to such a certain petition, some people, due to some petition, it was found that the secular principles of the country were infringed or they were brought into the discussion or debate. So that's why we'll be taking up this particular case also. Next is trans people deserve better. That is another article we'll be discussing, and other such articles like realizing the full potential of GST reform. GST reforms, as we have seen that from 4 slabs it has been changed to 2 slabs. So we'll be taking up that issue also, but from the perspective of a particular state. See, यहाँ पे perspective जब state का हम discuss करेंगे तो what we'll be looking at is the supply side changes which are required or the tweaks which are required from the supply side. तो हम एक state के perspective से देखेंगे क्या changes जो हैं वो helpful हो सकते हैं इस particular reform को fully utilize करने के लिए. Okay, next is Supreme Court just says it's high time defamation was decriminalized. ये जो क्रिमिनल डिफेमेशन के केसेस होते रहते हैं जो खासकर पॉलिटिकल वेंडेटा को सेटल करने के लिए यूज होते हैं, ये उसके रेफरेंस में आर्टिकल है. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट वी हैव 54 वेसल्स आर बीइंग बिल्ट फॉर नेवी, 10 टू जॉइन फ्लीट दिस ईयर. ये कहीं ना कहीं इंडिजीनियस या आत्मनिर्भरता की तरफ जो हम बढ़ रहे हैं एज फार एज डिफेंस इक्विपमेंट्स और डिफेंस वी कैन से हैवी मशीन्स आर कंसर्न, उसके बारे में ये आर्टिकल है. द नेक्स्ट वन इज नंबर ऑफ पॉल्यूटेड रिवर साइट्स आर शोइंग अ स्लाइट रिडक्शन. ये CPCB की रिपोर्ट है. ओके, तो इसको भी हम डिस्कस करेंगे जिसके अंदर हम ये देखेंगे कैसे रिवर्स जो हैं उनके अंदर जो पॉल्यूशन लेवल्स हैं वो कैसे घट रहे हैं, चाहे वो पीस मील अप्रोच के थ्रू ही घट रहे हो. बट एज वी ऑल नो रिवर्स आर लाइफलाइन. So that's why we need to discuss such articles. Next is H1B वीजा. Of course H1B वीजा के ऊपर ऑलरेडी बहुत सारी बातें हो रखी हैं, लेकिन इस आर्टिकल में हम जस्ट ऊपर से हम ये देखेंगे इस केस में केवल कि किस तरीके से H1B वीजा के जो इश्यूज अभी दोबारा से हम लोगों के सामने आ गए हैं, उसको हाउ विल बी हैंडलिंग एंड विल लुक इट एट फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ रैशनैलिटी. ओके, नेक्स्ट इज applications of lasers. Now a particular questionnaire has been given at the end of the Hindu newspaper, and we'll be discussing that just a bit because we would like you all to attempt those questions first because it has come up as a quiz in the Hindu. Okay, जैसे कि हम जानते ही हैं द हिंदू बहुत ही रेलिवेंट न्यूज़पेपर है यूपीएससी प्रिपरेशन की तरफ. एज अ मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट आपके सिलेबस में भी एक हद तक मेंशन्ड भी है. सो दैट्स व्हाई यू शुड रीड हिंदू फ्रॉम द पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ऑफ योर सिलेबस, not just like a regular newspaper. Okay, now let's start this session from the very first article which we are going to discuss, and it will be about the primary healthcare doctors. Now, as far as primary healthcare doctors are concerned, this article is more to do with what issues primary healthcare doctors are facing. As we all know, we have huge we can say constraint over the number of doctors which are involved in primary healthcare centers. एंड प्राइमरी हेल्थ केयर सेंटर जो है वो एक तरीके से अगर आप देखें तो वो हमारा जो पूरा हेल्थ केयर सिस्टम है उसके फाउंडेशन है. ओके, एंड ज़्यादातर जगहों पर खासकर विलेजेस या हिली टेरेन्स पे वहाँ पे प्राइमरी हेल्थ केयर डॉक्टर्स ही हैं हु आर देयर टू लुक फॉर पीपल. और वहाँ पे हम ये ऐसा पाते हैं कि 5,000 से लेकर 6,000 लोगों पर केवल एक डॉक्टर रहता है जिसके कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव जॉब्स भी होते हैं. कहने का मतलब ये कि कहीं ना कहीं ये जो इश्यूज हैं इसको हमें इस पर्सपेक्टिव में भी देखना है. एंड इफ द प्राइमरी हेल्थ केयर डॉक्टर्स इफ दे नॉट बी रिलीव फ्रॉम सच प्रेशर्स देन हाउ विल दे बी एबल टू वर्क टूवर्ड्स द बेटरमेंट ऑफ द हेल्थ ऑफ द पीपल. ओके, और ज्यादातर जो मासेस हैं उनको प्राइमरी हेल्थ केयर सेंटर्स के डॉक्टर्स ही डील कर रहे होते हैं, एंड दैट इज व्हाट दिस आर्टिकल इज अबाउट. ओके, दिस माइट नॉट बी विजिबल दैट मच टू यू ऑल, बट व्हाट आई वुड लाइक यू ऑल टू डू इज दैट गो थ्रू द न्यूज़पेपर, एंड दैट इज द best way to utilize these kind of discussion sessions. How to do that? Go to the article. While reading it, you also look for this discussion video, and that's how you are going to include it in your UPSC preparation. न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने का ऑल्टरनेटिव इस तरह के सेशंस नहीं हो सकते हैं. ओके, आपको न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ना पड़ेगा, एटलीस्ट रेलेवेंट आर्टिकल्स तो पढ़ने ही पड़ेंगे. उसके और भी बहुत सारे पर्पसेस हैं जैसे कि कॉम्प्रिहेंशन स्किल्स हो गए विच यू ऑल कैन डेवलप while going through the newspaper. So coming back to this article, what I would like to tell you is that as you can see there are some issues which have been mentioned here of primary healthcare centers, which is about primary healthcare centers today maintain over 100 physical registers, outpatient records, maternal and child health, non-communicable diseases, drug inventory and sanitation among others. Now there are a lot of information platforms which these primary health care center doctors have to do. अब आप खुद सोचिए अगर डॉक्टर जो है वो इस तरह के एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव वर्क में लग जाएगा तो वो अपनी डॉक्टरी कब करेगा, वो किस टाइम पर लोगों को सही तरीके से प्राइमरी हेल्थ केयर दे पाएगा. और प्राइमरी हेल्थ केयर डॉक्टर जो होता है वो एक उस कम्युनिटी का पार्ट बन जाता है, और इसलिए ये जरूरी है कि उसकी जो ग्रीवांसेस हैं उनको देखा जाए. और जैसा कि ये ग्रीवांसेस आप देख ही रहे हैं इस आर्टिकल में जब आप पढ़ेंगे तो विल गेट टू नो दैट अ पर्टिकुलर टर्म विच इज बीइंग यूज्ड फ्रॉम प्राइमरी हेल्थ केयर सेंटर डॉक्टर्स इज बर्नआउट. ओके, बर्नआउट इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इशू. बर्नआउट Burnout is very important issue, and it is not just a term which has been used in a layman terms. Okay, that term has been told by the Lancet, which is a very important magazine as far as the medical field is concerned, and that's why such kind of burnout has come into picture for the primary health care centers, and that needs to be taken care of. तो ये जो एक टर्म है बर्नआउट का, ये काफी हद तक रिसर्च किया गया है. दैट इज व्हाट हैज बीन रिटन इन दिस आर्टिकल, दैट बर्नआउट की जो इशू है उसको रिजॉल्व करना बहुत जरूरी है, अदरवाइज हमारे जो फाउंडेशनल इश्यूज है रिलेटेड टू हेल्थ केयर, जहां पर कि सबसे ज्यादा लोग जहां अप्रोच कर पाते हैं, एज यू कैन सी सेकेंडरी और टर्शियरी हेल्थ केयर पर कम ही लोग अप्रोच कर पाते हैं, ऑफ कोर्स विद सम पर्टिकुलर डिजीज ओनली और सम टर्मिनल डिजीज ओनली, इफ द पेशेंट फेसिंग दैट, तभी वो वहां पहुंचता है, अदरवाइज प्राइमरी हेल्थ सेंटर पे मेजर इश्यूज को सॉल्व करने की कोशिश की जाती है. सो दैट्स व्हाई this particular article is talking about how to resolve such issues. So rethinking the system is very much important. Strengthening primary care requires more than new building and names. It requires redesigning systems with empathy. Documentation must be meaningful. Redundant research should go. So यहाँ पे कहीं ना कहीं इस बात के बारे में बात की जा रही है, या इस मुद्दे के बारे में बात की जा रही है कि किस तरीके से ये जो इश्यूज है बर्नआउट का, इसको रिजॉल्व किया जाए, ताकि और उसके थ्रू एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव वर्क की तरफ फोकस किया जा रहा है कि हाउ टू रिजॉल्व सच एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव बॉटलनेक्स so that the doctor can proceed towards his actual job, which is providing medical care. Okay, so that is what this article is all about, and that you should be focusing on. Of course, the reference of US and other such elements like universal healthcare and such elements have been mentioned in this article. So while going through this article, what all you should be grasping for UPSC, ये आपका कंसर्न होना चाहिए. और वहां पे अगर आप देखेंगे तो यहाँ पे SDG 3 मेंशन्ड है. Now, once SDG 3 is mentioned, it is more about health, okay, and universal health coverage. इसके बारे में बात करता है, तो उसको आप रिलेट कर सकते हैं. If a doctor will be healthy, then only he can ensure the health of the community he belongs to. And that's why this article becomes very much important for your UPSC preparation. And that's why you should be looking at this particular article from the perspective of how to relieve stress or how to relieve the burnout of that particular doctor. Okay, so ये एक आर्टिकल जो है ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है आप लोगों के लिए. So go through this article and try to focus on what all elements have been mentioned, the administrative bottlenecks which are presented in front of primary healthcare doctors, and how to resolve them through the various resolutions which have been mentioned here. Okay, fine. Now, the next article which we need to talk about is the growing relevance of traditional medicine. Now see, the growing relevance of traditional medicine has been put up or has been brought up by the Union Minister of State Independent Charge for Ayurveda. Okay, Ayurveda basically Ayush Ministry. Okay, so as you can see here, you can find that various possibilities regarding the Ayush Ministry or the Ayush industry, which can be a potential GDP includer in our economy, has been mentioned here. As you can see that a $43.4 billion industry is available, or potential industry is, or potential economy addition is possible as far as Ayush Ministry goes. So that's what you need to look into perspective while talking about Ayurveda and other such practices. Okay, and that's what has been mentioned in this particular article. So now, as you can see here, now look, as you can see here, it has been categorically mentioned, and then the theme of this year's Ayurveda Day, which is September 23rd. And the theme around which this particular article is operating is Ayurveda for people and planet. Now, why is it important? See, when I say Ayurveda for people and planet, it doesn't talk about how it is going to help the people only. Okay, how it is going to help the people only. See, what has been told or what has been said about Ayurveda and other such practices is that it is collaborative towards the environment also. It is environment friendly. As you can say, it provides a balance between body and mind, human and nature. And that is what has been talked about in this particular article. Now, how this article is important for you all? You must understand that right now, as we are moving towards Atmanirbharta, after all the trade sanctions which has been imposed on us, after the Donald Trump regime has come into action, and of late a lot of issues have come up like H-1B visas as well as other such issues. So now we need to look within ourselves. Why we need to look within ourselves? Because we have such a huge market. We are the highest populous country in the world. So in order to revive the traditional medicine, we need to look into this market also. We need to pander to this market, and through this market we can develop a huge industry which is to do with traditional medicine, as you can see has been provided or has been done in China. Okay, now looking at the example of China, we can see out of the $583 billion medicine market, traditional medicine market, the China captures, or the Chinese traditional medicine captures $122.4 billion. Okay, so what is our purpose? The whole purpose of working in this particular field is to increase this 43.4 billion to at least $100 billion in the coming years. That can be a prospective thing, and that's how you can use these kind of data points in your mains answer also, when a particular question in this particular field or from this particular theme comes. So you need to take out these points. Of course data याद रखना उतना जरूरी नहीं है, but at least trend याद रखना बहुत जरूरी है कि कहीं ना कहीं हमारा जो पोटेंशियल है या फिर हमारा जो शेयर है इन द ग्लोबल ट्रेडिशनल मेडिसिन मार्केट, वो कहीं ना कहीं चाइना के 122.4 बिलियन से काफी ज्यादा कम है. ओके, एंड ऑलमोस्ट 6 टाइम्स कम है. ओके, 3 टाइम्स कम है. सो दैट्स व्हाई वंस वी need to fight or need to stand in front of such global giants, then we have to work in this particular direction. So this is something of very much importance. Apart from that, we should also look for that there is an issue around traditional medicine about the scientific validation of it. Now the scientific validation of it, now as far as the scientific validation goes, what we need to look into that, the various centers which have been developed, whether it is All India Institute of Ayurveda or the Institute of Teaching and Research in Ayurveda and the National Institute of Ayurveda and the Center Council for Research in Ayurvedic Sciences. So using these particular institutions, we can bring validity to traditional medicines which are available in India. Okay, so these all points are very much important for you all to understand. Apart from that, a lot of bilateral agreements have been done in this particular field, and that's what the Honorable Minister is telling or talking about this particular article. Now, as we can see, it is a very collaborative by approach. So that's why WHO's recent publication also on AI integration in traditional medicine has also come into picture. Okay, and that is how you can substantiate the argument that the recent technological changes which have been brought up in the world, they can also be collaborated or they can also be used to promote the traditional medicine. So that is how you need to look into this particular article, and that is how you can use this particular article in your UPSC preparation. Okay, now the next article which we need to look into is the base structure. Now the thing is, now this particular article is again very important one, and of course these kind of questions also come up, and at the end of this particular session we'll be talking about how questions can come up on this particular issue, that is the secularism. Now secularism is not an issue per se, it is part of our basic structure doctrine which is brought by Keshavanda Bharati case. Keshavanda Bharati case of course referred the basic structure doctrine or coined the term basic structure doctrine, and in subsequent cases secularism has been declared as a part of the basic structure doctrine. But the thing about it is that the context of it is very much important. Now the context of it is about the Dasara celebrations, in which Bhanu Mushtaq, who is an International Booker Prize winner, he was invited to inaugurate or to basically preside the Dasara celebrations in Mysuru. Now, once he came, a lot of petitions came up, or the petition came up in the Karnataka High Court where it was rejected. Again, it was brought up in the front of Supreme Court, in which the Supreme Court judges really found it ridiculous that why time and again this issue of the religious rights come up when a particular event which is more to do with the public is brought into the light. कहने का मतलब ये कि यहाँ पे आर्टिकल 25 to 28 को कोट करते हुए पिटीशन डाली गई और वहाँ पे एक बोला गया कि जो रिलीजियस राइट्स हैं वो इन्फ्रिंज हो रहे हैं जस्ट बिकॉज अ पर्सन हु इज फ्रॉम अ नॉन हिंदू कम्युनिटी इज trying to inaugurate a particular festival which is primarily a Hindu festival. But what does Supreme Court say? Supreme Court say that in the public sphere there is no we can say there is no question over, there must not be any question over about the discrimination on the basis of religion. And that's what being discussed in this particular article, though this particular news is already quite frequent nowadays and it has been coming for last 2-3 days. But what you need to take out of it is that to look at secularism from the various lenses. आपके किस काम का है ये न्यूज़, आपको ये देखना है, और जब आप ये देखेंगे तो आप जानेंगे कि किस तरीके से राइट टू इक्वालिटी जो है वो कहीं ना कहीं इस केस में आगे बढ़ जाती है फ्रॉम द रिलीजियस राइट्स वेयर द पब्लिक स्पेस इज अंडर क्वेश्चन. जहां पब्लिक स्पेस की बात हो रही है वहां पे जस्ट because of a particular event belonging to a particular religion, then it should not be attended by a person from not belonging to that religion. That doesn't make any sense. So that is what being discussed in this particular article, and that's what you need to take care. And you can also mention such cases while describing or while answering to a question on the basis of the question whose theme is secularism, and you can give such examples. So you can note down these examples because this time it is a lot coming in the newspaper, so that's why it becomes very relevant for all of you. The next one is trans people deserve better. Now, trans people deserve better. As we all know, trans people is another third gender which has been attributed to it in a lot of states, and a lot of activities are being done in their favor. They have been inducted into, as you see in news, कि आपको हमेशा न्यूज़ में इस तरह की खबरें मिलती होंगी कि किस तरीके से एक पर्टिकुलर ट्रांस पर्सन को कहीं पे पुलिस सर्विसेज में लिया गया है या फिर किस तरीके से उसको अलग सरकारी जॉब्स में इंडक्ट किया गया है, किया क्या गया है, अपने मेरिट पे उन्होंने किया है. सो दैट्स व्हाई सच काइंड ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन इज वेरी मच इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड फ्रॉम द सोसाइटी एस्पेक्ट of your general studies, this particular piece of information becomes very much important. Now, what has been talked about in this particular case? You need to understand that in this particular case, that how discrimination is being done to trans people, and just implementing some policies is not suffice, and that is what the writer of this article is talking about in this particular case, in this particular article. Now, as you can see, for gender minorities whose existence often questioned as ridiculed, the absence of inclusive, enforceable and human policy is not just a governance gap, it is denial of dignity. The person is talking, or in this case, Apsara Reddy is talking about the matter of dignity, which is a very important aspect. Now, where does dignity come? Dignity come under Article 21 only, okay? Because that is what has been told about the various Supreme Court judgments, okay? So, you need to look into this article from that perspective, that how to make things easier, or how to make things more humane for the people of the third gender or the trans people. Okay, now as you can see here, of course I am not misappropriating, but basically such people are included officially in the third gender. That's why I am saying so. So I must not be taken out of context. Okay, now anti-discrimination law, rental protection and workplace inclusivity must be enforced with penalties. Now basically what Apsara Reddy is talking about in this article is about what should be done, because a lot of discrimination is being faced by the people of the third gender, and that's what the writer is telling here. And she, belonging to we can say the same community, she also faced such issues, and that's what she is discussing here. So such examples can be used in the questions in the question from the GS1 paper, of the society part while explaining a question which talks about inclusivity of the third gender. Now, they are talking about a lot of resolutions which can be done, and that is what should be under preview of you all, that how to make things easier for the person of third gender, okay, and how to implement laws in a stringent way. Now, she is asking, he or she is asking about the what we can say is talking about the implementation of stringent laws, and also putting penalty on if a particular trans person is discriminated. Now, that is why these things become very much important, and you should note down all those elements which has been written in this articles, so that the smooth functioning of a, we can say, liberal society is possible, okay, and that's what being told in this particular article, okay. Now, in this article he is talking about Apsara Reddy is talking about the hollow quotas and other such. A lot of states have provided quotas to the third gender. So they are talking about that, okay, quotas are there, घर allocate कर दिया गया है, लेकिन घर को अपने नाम पे करवाने के लिए जो प्रोसेस इतना डिफिकल्ट हो जाता है, जिसके अंदर की दे हैव टू गो थ्रू द वेरियस voyeuristic questions and other such we can say indignity they have to face, and that's why such particular such particular laws should be implemented in which penal provision should be there, through which out of the fear of such penal provisions, the people should not be making comments or not making things difficult for trans people. So that's what this article is all about. Now, next is realizing the full potential of GST reforms, another very important article. Now, I already talked about this article by telling about all the important articles which have come today, which are UPSC relevant. Now, what to do about it? Now, the thing is, there are a couple of things which I have mentioned here, basically 3 things which I have mentioned here, that after reducing or after minimizing the number of slabs by the GST in the GST structure of our country, or goods and services tax regime in our country, how to utilize it at its full potential. So, for realizing it or for obtaining it at its full potential, we need to eliminate supply side bottlenecks, and that's what this article is all about. Now, what this article is talking about? This article is talking about a number of places where this particular reduction should be taken up in context. Like the first one is they are talking about GST reduction in cement from 28% to 18%. Now, they are saying it's a significant victory, of course, but one should take into context is that if the houses will not be constructed, and basically in PMAY, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, if the houses will not be constructed at that pace, then this reduction will not be utilized till its full potential. So that is what is being talked about in this particular article. What else is there? Another aspect of it is GST rate cut in handicraft from 12% to 5%. Now, it's a great move. Okay. Now, in order to utilize such, we can say reductions, we need to look into the handicrafts or the, we can say, GI tagged activities which are available in all the states. Of course, in this particular case, the person who has written the article is talking about Andhra Pradesh, but we need to look into the other such handicraft activities which are there in other states also. केवल यहाँ पे आंध्र प्रदेश की बात केवल यहाँ पे आंध्र प्रदेश की बात नहीं करनी है, हमें यहाँ पे बाकी स्टेट्स की भी बात करनी है, जहां पर हमें समझना है। और मैं यही आपसे कह रहा हूं, जब भी कोई आर्टिकल जब आपकी न्यूज़पेपर में आता है तो उसको आप जब आप पढ़ रहे हैं तो उसको केवल पर्सपेक्टिव से उस आर्टिकल के ना देखें, या फिर द राइटर ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर आर्टिकल माइट बी बिलोंगिंग टू अ पर्टिकुलर रीजन एंड माइट बी हैविंग एन एजेंडा. आई एम नॉट सेइंग एजेंडा इन अ नेगेटिव कोनोटेशन, आई एम जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट that particular person is writing that particular article belonging to a region or religion. But the thing is, you should look at that article from the perspective that how can you use that particular information in other cases also. So that's what I'm quoting here, that यहां पर जो सेकेंड रिफॉर्म है कि हैंडीक्राफ्ट में 12% टू 5% जीएसटी घटा दिया गया है, इसके थ्रू जो इंडिया की हैंडीक्राफ्ट इंडस्ट्री जो है उसको आप आगे बढ़ा सकते हैं। ओके, उसको एक पुश मिल सकता है, और वो पुश जो है, जो सप्लाई साइड पुश जो है, दैट इज गोइंग टू basically show that these reductions are going to help. Now, such reductions have been brought up looking at the global perspective also. कहीं ना कहीं जैसे मैंने स्टार्टिंग में बताया था कि किस तरीके से टैरिफ इश्यूज जो है या फिर H1B रिलेटेड जो इश्यूज जो है, उस कारण से कहीं ना कहीं इंडिया जो अभी घिरा हुआ है. दैट्स व्हाई इंडिया शुड लुक इनवर्ड, एंड वी हैव सच अ ह्यूज पॉपुलेशन, एंड थ्रू दीज रिडक्शंस वी can really meet the demand which is going to come up. Okay, if supply side constraints will not be eliminated, then for sure unnecessarily items which are cheaper or which can be sold at a competitive price will not be able to do so. So that's why supply side constraints must be taken into consideration, and that's why in this particular article, scheme for fund for regeneration of traditional industries has been discussed at large. Okay, such schemes are very much important. Okay, UPSC can ask question in its prelims paper as well as mains. In mains you can mention such particular schemes so as to substantiate your claim when you're talking about the revival of the handicraft industry in India. As you all know, इंडिया जब सोने की चिड़िया कहलाया जाता था, तब यही हैंडीक्राफ्ट इंडस्ट्री थी जो कि इंडिया को सोने की चिड़िया बना रही थी, चाहे वो मसलिन का कपड़ा हो, चाहे वो सिल्क का कपड़ा हो, चाहे इस तरह की चीज़ें जो हो, जो हमारी यूरोपियन मार्केट्स में बहुत ही ज़्यादा दामों में बिकती थी, जिस कारण से कि इंडिया के पास बहुत ज़्यादा सोना आता था. वो सोना जो था वो इनफ्लो होता था फ्रॉम यूरोप, फ्रॉम ब्रिटेन, जो कि आगे चलकर आफ्टर बैटल ऑफ प्लासी एंड ऑल रिड्यूस हो गया. But at that time, these all handicraft industry was the mainstay, was the industry from India, was the only industry from India, and that's why we need to revive that thing, but not on the cost of regular industries. पर हमें कहीं ना कहीं handicraft industry को ये push जो है देना जरूरी है through such schemes. Another aspect of it is agriculture. Now in agriculture also from 12% to 5% decrease कर दिए गए हैं agriculture machinery से cost को. अब इसके पीछे क्या रीजन है? चाहे वो doubling farmers income हो, which we couldn't achieve but 2022 which was the earlier target, but अभी भी हमारे पास वक्त है कि हम इस तरह के कट्स को यूज करते हुए कहीं ना कहीं अपने जो एग्रीकल्चर है उसको थोड़ा सा हम कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव साथ साथ एफिशिएंट कर पाए. बिकॉज ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड द मैक्सिमम पीपल इन इंडिया आर एसोसिएटेड विद एग्रीकल्चर एंड अलाइड एक्टिविटीज, और अनलेस we are going to support this particular, we can say, section of people through such cuts, we will not be able to achieve the kind of progress which we are looking for. After all, India is aspiring to become a developed country by 2047 as per Honorable Prime Minister's call of Viksit Bharat by 2047. So that's why in that particular path we need to look for our farmers, और साथ ही साथ एग्रीकल्चर अलाइड जो सेक्टर्स है उन पे ध्यान देना बहुत जरूरी है, बिकॉज सबसे ज्यादा लोग जो हैं वो उसी सेक्टर के बेसिस पर अपना रोजी रोटी कमा पाते हैं. So that's why these particular things should be mentioned here. So these three particular items, first is about cement or we can say construction, second is about handicraft industry, and third is about agriculture, is being discussed at length. So इस तरह के जो articles है ये बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है आप लोगों के लिए, because you can, while reading through such articles, you can get to know that okay, what all changes can be brought and how a particular reduction cut or how a particular GST reform can be utilized to its full potential. Got it? Next is Supreme Court just says it's high time defamation was decriminalized. Okay, now again it's a very important article, decriminalization of defamation. अब जैसे defamation आप जान रहे हैं, defamation को कैसे एक political tool की तरह use किया जाता है. Whenever that's what has been mentioned in this article, the various instances has been shown in which criminal defamation has been a case of criminal defamation brought up by one leader against another just because of some speech or just because of some particular comment, and that is what this article is talking about. But what is important for you all, The important part of this article is about that in the Swami versus Union of India case 2016, the top court, of course Supreme Court, had upheld the constitutional validity of criminal defamation, deeming it a reasonable restriction of the right to free speech. Okay, it's a part of restriction, reasonable restriction in Article 19. Article 19 talks about freedom of expression. So this has been talked in this particular article, and then in recent months various Supreme Court benches have stayed summons in criminal defamation case, often making critical comments such as do not be so touchy or the court is not a forum to settle political scores. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट, ऑनरेबल सुप्रीम कोर्ट समझ नहीं पा रहा है कि क्या हो रहा है क्या नहीं हो रहा है, लेकिन आफ्टर ऑल दे आर बाउंड बाय द अर्लियर verdicts, so they will have to come up with a certain verdict which basically decriminalizes the criminal defamation. But is Supreme Court the right forum to make laws? No. Of course, the primary forum to make laws is legislature, Parliament of India. So basically, Supreme Court wants is that कि parliamentarians जो है they should make a law, draft a law under which such particular defamation should be decriminalized. But parliamentarians का issue ये है कि they are the ones who are involved in we can say bringing up these cases in front of the judiciary. So ये कहीं ना कहीं एक तरीके का we can say vicious circle है कि जो लोग ही ये चाहते हैं कि क्रिमिनल डिफेमेशन लगाए किसी पर, उन्हीं का काम है क्रिमिनल डिफेमेशन को डिक्रिमिनलाइज करें. और कहीं ना कहीं एक इवॉल्व सोसाइटी की पहचान होती है कि अपनी जो इश्यूज है उनको एक्नॉलेज करते हुए दे शुड एक्ट ऑन इट. सो दैट्स व्हाट इज बीइंग टॉक्ड अबाउट इन दिस पर्टिकुलर आर्टिकल. और यहाँ पे कुछ चीजें जो है बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाती है, जैसे कि आप लोग के लिए जानना कि क्रिमिनल डिफेमेशन जो है वो रीजनेबल रेस्ट्रिक्शन की जब बात करता है तो वो किस आर्टिकल की बात कर रहा है, या फिर किस आर्टिकल के अंतर्गत क्रिमिनल डिफेमेशन जो है वो एक तरीके से वी कैन से as you can see here that less than a decade ago the Supreme Court upheld the constitutional validity of criminal defamation, saying it is a protected reputation, a part of the fundamental right to life. तो कहीं ना कहीं ये जो रेपुटेशन वाली जो बात है इसको राइट टू लाइफ के अंदर इनकॉर्पोरेट किया गया. और इस तरह के जो केसेस हैं, जैसे कि एक बहुत ही फेमस क्वेश्चन है यूपीएससी प्री का, विच इज अबाउट कि राइट टू वोट इज विच काइंड ऑफ राइट, ओके, एंड वेरियस ऑप्शंस वर गिवन देयर. तो वहां पे कहीं ना कहीं आप समझिए इस बात को कि ऑन द फेस ऑफ इट अपीयर्स एज अ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल राइट, बट because of the Kuldeep Nayyar case, it was decided on a statutory right, and that's what UPSC also accepted कि okay fine, this is a statutory right, and that's what they gave is their answer. So that's why these particular cases, this particular right to dignity and the things regarding or the concepts regarding dignity come around right to life, and these kind of piece of information you all must be having. कुछ केसेस याद रखने ज़रूरी हैं, ऐसा नहीं है सारे केसेस याद रखने ज़रूरी हैं, बट कुछ केसेस जब वो पेपर में आते हैं और दे अपीयर लाइक टू बी इन सपोर्ट ऑफ और रिगार्डिंग सम फंडामेंटल राइट, देन दे कम इनटू पिक्चर, एंड दैट दीज पर्टिकुलर केसेस यू शुड बी नोटिंग डाउन एंड कीप ऑन रिवाइजिंग इट. वैसे तो ये आप एक बार पढ़ेंगे तो भी याद हो जाएगा, लेकिन स्टिल ये केसेस याद रखना बहुत ज़रूरी है, बिकॉज इसको आप यूज़ कर सकते हो अपने मेंस एग्जाम में भी, और साथ ही साथ आप इसके थ्रू आपके प्रीलिम्स के क्वेश्चंस को भी अप्रोच कर सकते हो. सो दैट्स व्हाई इट बिकम्स वेरी मच इंपॉर्टेंट. नाउ द नेक्स्ट आर्टिकल अंडर is the next article which we'll be discussing is regarding the 54 vessels are being built for Navy, 10 to join fleet this year. This is all about Atmanirbharta. Now try to understand, this article talks about INS Tamal. Okay. Now Indian Navy is claiming it is the last ship which has been built by Russia. In this case, it is the last major warship constructed abroad. And from now on, most of the warships will be constructed in India. And that is what this article is all about, that 54 vessels till 2030 is going to be prepared. And what are these vessels? These are vessels basically comprised of various ships, various submarines, and other such we can say naval heavy machineries. So this article is talking about those particular things. Now as you can see here that It is talking about 54 vessels, but what are the important piece of information in this particular article? Now, try to look into this article from that perspective that कहीं ना कहीं ये यहाँ पे जब इंडिजीनियस कंस्ट्रक्शन की बात कर रहा है तो वहाँ पे वो मेक इन इंडिया की तरफ जा रहा है, साथ साथ आत्मनिर्भरता की तरफ भी जा रहा है. तो यू कैन यूज सच एग्जाम्पल्स इन योर एग्जाम, बट फॉर यूजिंग इट यू नीड टू रिमेंबर सम फैक्ट्स ऑल्सो. लाइक आई टॉक्ड अबाउट INS Tamal, then you need to understand INS Androd. Now, what is INS Androd? The second in a series of 8 anti-submarine warfare shallow water craft. Now, it has been built by GRSC. इतना इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है शायद कि GRC बिल्ड कर रहा है इसे, लेकिन just try to understand that such particular examples are very much important. Why it is important? Because this particular, we can say, this particular watercraft is 80% indigenous content. Androd stand as a testament to India's growing capabilities, and that is what has been said by Navy officials also. So, such kind of such kind of facts, such kind of data points become very much important for all of you, because you can quote such examples while substantiating your claim of Make in India or the indigenous construction of various naval ships or submarines by our government. So, it becomes again very important piece of information, and you all should be taking care of such pieces of information. Now, it is all talking about that the Indian Navy wants to become from buyer's navy to builder's navy. Now, it's a very such a beautiful quote. Buyer's navy Now, try to understand such particular quotes or such particular, we can say, creativity. Such kind of creativity is going to help you fetch such those novelty points in your mains exam, and that's why such piece of information become very much important. Now, why indigenous or the navy becoming a builder's navy is important for us? Because we have some hostile nations around us like Pakistan and China, and we need to provide a certain level of response, like we are the first responder, preferred security partner in the Indian Ocean region. Apart from that, the Sagar, security and growth for all in region vision, is another India's venture which we should be looking into perspective. And while looking at such particular things, we need to look into the indigenous construction of our naval ships or submarines, and that was being taught in this particular article, and that's why you need to look into this article from that perspective. Okay, now next article is another very important article. Okay, we are almost at the end of our discussion. This is probably the second last topic, and the last topic I'll be talking about because it has been talked in Hindu, it has been given as a question. So I would request you all that you read about such particular thing. We'll talk about that particular article when it comes, but let's look into this particular article. It has a lot of important terms, so that's why this particular article becomes very important. Now, what are those terms? What CPCB says is that the number of locations in the rivers have unfit to bathe saw an increment dip to 807. छोटा सा डिप है, लेकिन ये डिप है कि कहीं ना कहीं जहां पे हम नहा सकते हैं, नहाने लायक जो चीजें हैं, वो इस बारे में क्वेश्चन में बात की गई है. पर कौन से टर्म्स है जो इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाते हैं, जैसे बायोलॉजिकल ऑक्सीजन डिमांड. अब बायोलॉजिकल ऑक्सीजन डिमांड के बारे में इन स्ट्रेच अगर बताया जाए तो बेसिकली जो ऑर्गेनिक मैटर होता है पानी के अंदर, वो बायोलॉजिकल ऑक्सीजन डिमांड की बात करता है. इट्स अ प्रॉक्सी फॉर बायोलॉजिकल ऑक्सीजन डिमांड. नाउ जितना ये कम होता है उतना वो पर्टिकुलर जो वाटर बॉडी होता है वो उतना क्लीन माना जाता है, लेस पॉल्यूटेड माना जाता है. बिकॉज ज्यादा ऑर्गेनिक मैटर अगर उसके अंदर इकट्ठा हो गया तो इट विल रियली डिफिकल्ट फॉर द वेरियस लिविंग ऑर्गेनिजम्स विच आर देयर इन दैट वाटर बॉडी टू हैव ऑक्सीजन. जब ऑर्गेनिक मैटर बढ़ जाएगा तो ऑब्वियस सी बात है ऑक्सीजन का स्कोप कम हो जाएगा. सो दैट्स व्हाई as much less as BOD is, that much that particular water body is livable or breathable. Okay, now some important data points are mentioned here, that BOD greater than 3 milligrams per liter, BOD greater than 3 milligrams per liter per liter indicates rising pollution and considered unfit for bathing. इससे ज्यादा अगर बायोलॉजिकल ऑक्सीजन डिमांड होगा तो यहां पर जो वो रिवर है, वो जो बॉडी है, वो पॉल्यूशन इंडिकेट करता है और अनफिट फॉर बेदिंग बन जाता है। कहने का मतलब नहाने के लिए वो अनफिट हो जाता है पानी, ठीक है। और जब इस तरीके के दो इंस्टेंसेस मिलते हैं, कहने का मतलब ऐसे टू कंटिन्यूअस लोकेशंस एक्सीडिंग द क्राइटेरियन इन द सिंगल रिवर इज काउंटेड एज अ पॉल्यूटेड रिवर स्ट्रेच। ओके, नाउ दिस इज सम वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टर्म्स, पॉल्यूटेड रिवर स्ट्रेच, PRS. Okay, now these are very important terms. Try to understand. You need to understand these terms and you need to remember these terms so as to use them, and these can be asked in your prelims exam also. Now, what they are talking about? They are talking about a survey. In the survey, they are talking about priority 1. Priority 1 also, priority 1 locations. Now, what are priority 1 locations? The priority 1 locations are जहां पर की ये जो आप ऑर्गेनिक मैटर देख रहे हो, ये 30 मिलीग्राम पर लीटर पहुंच जाता है। आप समझ रहे हैं इस बात को? 3 मिलीग्राम पर लीटर और यहाँ पे 30 मिलीग्राम पर लीटर यहां पहुंच जाता है, उसको प्रायोरिटी 1 कहते हैं। और ऐसे इंस्टेंसेस कुछ पर्टिकुलर स्टेट्स में ज्यादा पाए गए हैं, जैसे कि तमिलनाडु, उत्तर प्रदेश एंड उत्तराखंड है द हाईएस्ट नंबर 5 ऑफ स्ट्रेचेस और लोकेशंस इन प्रायोरिटी 1, जहां पे 30 मिलीग्राम पर लीटर पहुंच गया है। सो व्हाट यू नीड टू लुक इनटू दैट इज दिस इज दैट such particular terms and such particular terms can be asked in a UPSC pre. So that's why these things become very important. So the terms which are discussing here were biological oxide demand, then again polluted river stretch and priority 1. Polluted river stretch basically जहां पे भी biological oxide demand के दो लोकेशंस मिल जाते हैं जहां पे 3 मिलीग्राम पर लीटर से ज्यादा है, वहां पर हम पॉल्यूटेड रिवर स्ट्रेच कहलाता है वो पर्टिकुलर स्ट्रेच जो होता है रिवर का। और जहां पर 30 मिलीग्राम पर लीटर से ज्यादा हो जाता है उसको हम प्रायोरिटी 1 में डाल देते हैं, बिकॉज उनको साफ करना तो बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है। ओके, क्योंकि काफी ज्यादा वहां का बायोलॉजिकल ऑक्सीजन डिमांड जो है वो बढ़ चुका है। तो इस कारण से जैसे जैसे बायोलॉजिकल ऑक्सीजन डिमांड बढ़ता जाएगा, कहने का तो ऑर्गेनिक मैटर जो है बढ़ता जा रहा है और इस कारण से वो रिवर जो है वो और पॉल्यूटेड होती जा रही है। गॉट इट? सो दीज टर्म्स नीड टू बी लुक्ड इनटू पर्सपेक्टिव और इस पे ध्यान देना बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है आप सबके लिए, ठीक है। ओके, द नेक्स्ट वन इज अ वेरी सिंपल आर्टिकल, India's H1B visa dependence on a decline last 6 to 8 years. You can go through this article. H1B वीजा के ऊपर अभी आजकल बहुत आर्टिकल आएगा। आज ही के न्यूज़पेपर में विमेन पे क्या इंपैक्ट आ रहा है H1B वीजा का, जो नई गाइडलाइंस आए हैं उसके बारे में बात की गई है। आप पढ़ सकते हैं, यू कैन गो थ्रू देम, बट हाउ मच रेलिवेंट इट इज गोइंग टू बी फॉर यूपीएससी प्रिपरेशन, दैट इज अंडर क्वेश्चन। एनीवे H1B के बारे में पिछले 2-3 दिन से और आने वाले दिनों में कुछ और इंपॉर्टेंट आर्टिकल्स भी आएंगे। इफ दे अपीयर टू बी वेरी मच इंपॉर्टेंट, देन I'll be discussing them in front of you. Okay, so ये बस एक piece of information है जो आप रख सकते हो, which brings this particular decline or looks at this particular change in the visa, in the fee in a different perspective. That क्या पता हमेशा इतना परेशान होने की जरूरत ही नहीं है, because anyway H1B वीजा की जो डिमांड थी वो कहीं ना कहीं डिपेंडेंस थी, वो कहीं ना कहीं कम होते जा रही थी in last 6 to 8 years. Okay, so this is something which you should look in perspective. Now next one is application of lasers. Now see, try to understand UPSC when they say the part of syllabus science and technology, they more dwell into the technology part. So that's why this particular piece of information becomes very important. Another important piece of information which came into this newspaper, which has not been tabulated here, is about the AI, okay, and about how the photons can be used in place of electrons. You can go through such huge articles, but what I would suggest to you is that just you need to note down the technology aspect of it. Just in the same way, in this case, in the case of application of lasers, you can just note down the technology part of it, and that only will be relevant for all of you from the UPSC perspective. Okay, now let's look into the questions. Now the first question which has been mentioned here is about the compare and contrast the Indian model of secularism with the Western liberal model. Okay, now what does the Western model of secularism say? It says separation of state from religion. Okay, strict separation. This is strict separation. Okay. But what is there? What is different in case of India? Indian secularism is different by nature. It talks about principled distance as well as intervention. It also talks about equality between religions or equality within religion. Basically, it means inter-religion equality and intra-religion equality. Okay, inter-religion equality basically means the equality between the various sects in a particular religion. Like say in Islam, there is Sunni and Shia, or say Ahmadiyya and other such particular sects. And then in case of Hinduism or Jainism, we can say Digambar, Shwetambar. In case of Hinduism also, the kind of sects like Kabir Panthi, or we can say Lingayats, such sects are there. So those also, there should be parity, there should be equality, not even parity. There should be equality among all those sects as far as the government looks at it. Okay, and it is talking about principal intervention and principal distance. Again, these two aspects. What are these two aspects? Principal distance basically means that the state should not be getting involved or getting too close to a particular religion. But at the same time, the state can intervene if they see that some particular activity on the name of religion is being executed, which is not good for public order. Okay, like erstwhile, as we see that child marriages, or we can also talk about other such activities which are being taking place in all the various religions, also like triple talaq, other such activities. So the state can intervene in that case through law, of course, and criminalize, or we can say they can make legal sanctions on such particular activities, and that is what principal intervention means. Okay, so this is the primary difference, that in India such activities are being taken up, but in the Western liberal model there is strict separation of state from religion. Okay, that is the primary difference. You can formulate your answer around this particular question. Okay, next one is about the question is about biological oxygen demand. Again, I already talked about it, that it has been used as a parameter to judge the health of a particular river. So the first statement is of course correct. A lower BOD value indicates better water quality. Of course, I already told you 3 milligram per liter. Of course, it is about organic matter. So if the organic matter is less than this, okay, then of course the water is, we can say, suitable for taking bath. Not talking about drinking, taking bath. So as much low as the BOD is, that particular river is as clean. Okay, so both the statements are correct in this particular case, and that is what being written in the explanation. Okay. Next question is again in relation to the criminal defamation. This question is simply asking that criminal defamation in India is associated with which of the following fundamental rights? Of course, right to life, because criminal defamation is about dignity. Okay. Okay. Now, once dignity comes into action, right to life comes under the purview, and that's why criminal defamation has got constitutional sanction because of its association with Article 21 on the grounds of dignity. Okay, so that's why you need to look into these particular questions and this particular concepts from the perspective of UPSC. तो जब भी आप न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ें तो आप समझिए कि हर एक पर्टिकुलर आर्टिकल में आपको कहीं ना कहीं ये देखना पड़ेगा कि किस तरीके से UPSC रेलेवेंस जो है वो इंश्योर हो पा रहा है. Okay, that's it from my side. I hope this session was fruitful for all of you. Tomorrow again we'll